Hey! Before jumping onto the topic, have you heard the word coagulation? It is synonymous with clotting, right? It's one of the mechanisms of hemostasis. Now, what's hemostasis? It's the check and balance of blood. During coagulation, body converts blood into a semi-solid gel-like form, which we refer to as clot, to prevent blood loss. Do you know what are coagulants? Simply, the substances that promote or prevent clotting. Procoagulants promote clotting while anticoagulants do the opposite. A question arises here. If they're present normally in blood or not? In normal conditions, the anticoagulants in our blood dominate. But after an injury, the opposite happens. Procoagulants dominate. If you are still watching, hit the subscribe button. Coming to our main topic for today, the cascade. Cascade simply means the chain of reactions. So, there are three main steps of the coagulation cascade. When there is a rupture in blood vessel or damage to blood, a few mechanisms take place. Step 1, formation of prothrombin activators. Step 2, conversion of prothrombin into thrombin. Step 3, conversion of fibrinogen into fibrin, which is the final step, and then clot is formed. Now, we'll have a closer look to these steps. Step 1 was the formation of prothrombin activators. So, for that we have two major pathways: extrinsic pathway and intrinsic pathway. What is an extrinsic pathway? Extrinsic pathway occurs in response to damage to the vessel wall. It's rapid, as clotting occurs at about 15 seconds. There are three major steps of this pathway. Step 1 is the release of factor 3. Factor 3 is composed of phospholipids and lipoproteins. Then in step 2, lipoprotein part of factor 3 combines with factor 7, and activates it into 7A, which in turn converts factor 10 into 10A in the presence of calcium. In the final step of this pathway, factor 10 combines with phospholipids and factor 5, in the presence of calcium, and gets converted into prothrombin activator. Now, let's have a look at intrinsic pathway. It occurs due to damage to the blood, and it's slow as the clotting requires 1 to 6 minutes to occur. There are 5 steps to it. In step 1, factor 12 contacts with exposed collagen and gets activated into 12A. In step 2, factor 12 activates factor 11 in the presence of kininogen and callicurin. In step 3, factor 11 activates factor 9. In step 4, factor 9, 8, 3 and traumatized platelets activates factor 10. In step 5, factor 10, 5 and phospholipids from platelet tissues activates prothrombin activator. Now let's talk about our step 2 of this cascade, which, if you recall, was conversion of prothrombin into thrombin. So, in this step, platelet, phospholipids and prothrombin activator converts prothrombin to thrombin in the presence of calcium. You might have noticed that calcium have its role in almost every step of the cascade. Why is it so important in clotting? So, answer to that is calcium promotes and accelerates clotting, and without it cascade won't occur. Now, the final step of the cascade, where conversion of fibrinogen into fibrin occurs. So, in this step, thrombin converts fibrinogen to its active form, by removing 4 low molecular weight peptides and convert it into fibrin. Fibrin monomers polymerize, initiating clot formation. In the initial phase, fibrin monomers are bonded by non-covalent hydrogen bonds, forming a weak fibrin polymer. Eventually, the hydrogen bonds get replaced by covalent bonds in response to factor 13, giving the clot a 3-dimensional strength. This was our final step, so the clotting has finally occurred now and the cascade reaches the end. Now, let's have a look at the components of a clot. Fibrin fibers are of course the first and foremost component. Then during cross-linking, platelets and blood cells get entrapped within the meshwork, so they are also present in clot, and then some plasma too. Now, thinking of coagulation cascade, what kind of feedback mechanism does it follow? So the answer to this is positive feedback mechanism. Once a blood clot has started to form, it goes on, until bleeding stops completely. As once thrombin formation approaches a critical level, blood clot continues to grow until all the blood leakage ceases. Here are some MCQ on your screen. Post your answers in the comments section. Pause the video and take your time to answer the questions. As we are discussing about blood, different mechanisms being regulated in blood or by blood components, we should have a look at one of the most important mechanisms for human survival, which is WBC's defense mechanism and immune response. For that, have a look at our next video.